Imagine a government so stable, so powerful, that it ruled a nation for over 2.5 centuries. It seemed absolutely unshakable. And then, in what felt like the blink of an eye, it completely fell apart. This is the incredible story of how the Tokugawa shogunate collapsed.
It's a huge question, right? What on earth could be powerful enough to bring down a dynasty that had basically perfected the art of control for generations?
Just let that number sink in for a second. 260 years. That's about 10 generations, all living under a single, unbroken military government. And then, poof, in less than 20 years, it was all over. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the turmoil that kicked everything off. Then, how the rebels found their focus. We'll get into the secret alliance that changed the game, the shogun's unbelievable surrender, and finally, how a new Japan was born from the ashes. So, our story really starts in the mid-1800s. Japan is getting squeezed from two sides. You've got pressure from the outside world and, maybe even more importantly, from deep within the country itself. When foreign ships basically forced Japan's ports open, it wasn't just a political crisis. It was a full-blown economic earthquake. You see, this sudden rush of international trade completely shattered the nation's carefully balanced economy, as all these essential goods started flooding out of the country. And for the average person, the result was absolutely devastating. As all these goods were sold overseas, things people needed to live, like rice, became incredibly hard to find. The price of rice alone more than tripled in just 8 years. People were literally starved.
Well, all that economic pain quickly exploded into social chaos. People weren't just unhappy anymore, they were desperate. Riots and mass uprisings, some people even called them world renewal movements, just erupted all over the country. Common people were lashing out against a system that just couldn't take care of them anymore.
So, while the common people are rioting, what are the powerful samurai domains doing about all this? Well, their first instinct was pretty straightforward: kick the foreigners out by force. Spoiler alert, that didn't exactly go to plan. The two heavyweights in Western Japan, the Choshu and Satsuma domains, decided to take matters into their own hands. Choshu, led by guys like Kido Takeyoshi, started attacking foreign ships. Satsuma, with leaders like the famous Saigo Takamori, also went head-to-head with foreign forces. And they both learned the exact same brutal lesson. Their swords and spears were no match for modern Western cannons and rifles. This humiliating defeat led to this massive light bulb moment. The leaders of Choshu and Satsuma suddenly realized that fighting the West was a lost cause as long as Japan was so weak and divided. Their target completely shifted. The real enemy wasn't the foreigners, it was the shogunate. The government itself was now seen as the #1 threat to Japan's very survival. Okay, so, great. They have the same goal now, but there was one huge problem. Choshu and Satsuma were bitter, historic enemies. Getting them to work together, that seemed completely impossible. It was going to take a very special kind of person to bridge that gap. And this is where Sakamoto Ryoma steps onto the scene. Now, this guy was a low-ranking samurai, a total maverick, but he was a true visionary. He illegally broke away from his own domain, went to study modern tech under a top shogun official of all people, and then started his own modern trading company. His eyes were on the future, not on old grudges. So in 1866, Ryoma does the unthinkable. He convinces Saigo and Kido, the leaders of these two warring domains, to actually meet in secret. He got them to see that their common enemy, the shogunate, was a much bigger threat than their old feud. And the result was the Sacho Alliance, a secret military pact to bring down the government. The revolution finally had its army.
Now, with its two most powerful domains secretly allied against it, and the whole country in chaos, the Tokugawa shogunate was completely backed into a corner. The 15th and final shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, was facing a truly impossible choice.
Yoshinobu could see the writing on the wall. He knew a massive civil war was coming, one that would tear Japan apart and leave it totally vulnerable. So, he made a jaw-dropping decision. In October of 1867, he did what no one thought was possible. He voluntarily dissolved his own government and handed all political power back to the emperor.
This historic event is known as Taisei Hokan, which means the formal restoration of imperial rule. Just like that, with the stroke of a pen, 2.5 centuries of military dictatorship officially came to a quiet end.
But it's never that simple, right? The story doesn't just end with a signature. The shogun might have surrendered his power, but his loyal followers and the entire old system weren't just going to disappear. A new Japan had to be forged, and it was going to be forged in fire. And this led straight into the Boshin War. For the next year and a half, the new imperial government's army fought bloody battles against forces that were still loyal to the old shogunate. This war was absolutely crucial for cementing the new government's power across the entire country, ending with a final, dramatic siege at that famous star-shaped fortress, the Goryokaku in Hokkaido. But even during all that fighting, there were these incredible moments of foresight. The rebel leader Saigo Takamori actually sat down and negotiated with the shogun's top minister, Katsu Kaishu, for the peaceful surrender of Edo Castle. This single act saved the city of Edo, what we now call Tokyo, from being burned to the ground. It showed that the new leaders could be practical nation builders, not just angry revolutionaries. And so one era ended, and a completely new one began. The shogunate was gone, sure, but the real work, that was just getting started. Its collapse left behind the most critical question of all. Now that the old world is gone, how in the world do you build an entirely new nation from the ashes? And that monumental challenge is what would define the Meiji Restoration.